Howdy folks, this is Father Dougal 9000 here, and welcome to another episode of Dougal's Game Finish Chronicles, a series where I talk about the games I've played and beaten as part of the Hardcore Gaming 101 Forums Game Finish Challenge. So, a bit of technical talk before we kick things off. Normally with these vids, I tend to put together 2, 3, sometimes even 4 of them around the same time, and then schedule them to be posted every Friday, weeks in advance of them actually going up. That's because it's quite easy to do considering the deliberately low effort nature of these videos, and it allows me a bit of breathing space whenever I need it, or stuff comes up, or if I just feel like it really. I'm bringing this up because it's been a month since I produced last week's video, as I made a big batch of them so I could take a break while my brother and his girlfriend were visiting from Canada for a few weeks. It was really lovely, had a few meetups, went to Skibbereen on the weekend, did mad and crazy things like order from a chipper at 1 in the morning, which I seriously had never done before and it was quite cool. But at some point during this break, I ended up with a bit of a throat congestion thing that resulted in a somewhat hoarse voice and an annoying amount of coughing that you will happily never get to hear. It's still kinda there, and as a result, the back end of this video, and the next few videos in general, are gonna feature me speaking in a slightly deeper, hoarser tone than I normally have. So that's why I'm going to sound a little strange for a while, and probably sound a bit strange right now, but maybe that'll make said videos a bit more interesting than they'd otherwise be, even though the games discussed are always going to be interesting and cool, because, well, they are. Shush. Speaking of which, today's games were originally logged from the 28th of September to the 3rd of October 2021. Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening Special Edition for the Xbox 360. I decided to carry on playing the Devil May Cry games, skipping the infamous 2 as it didn't sound particularly appealing to me at the time, and heading straight on into 3. Considering it was made by a different team, Capcom Pro Studio 1 led by Hideaki Itsuno as opposed to Pro Studio 4 led by Hideki Kamiya, I'm genuinely impressed at how much 3 matches the original mechanically while using that as a foundation to develop new ideas like instant weapon swapping and the style mechanics. Though, for the sake of fairness, some of these actually came from 2, from what I understand. It works really well as a direct sequel in terms of gameplay, and it's loads of fun to swap weapons, dodging about the place with Trickster, and using taunts to tease your enemies. Also, the story is excellent. It's amazing how stark the difference is in cutscene direction and quality between 1 and 3. 1's got a good story, but it's absolutely presented like an old school Resident Evil game with its straightforward action and earnest if hokey localization. But 3 is where we enter that period when Capcom action games started getting these insanely well put together cutscenes in which the cinematography, the editing, the music scoring, the mix of motion capture and original animation, the acting, the dialogue, and of course, the action all culminate to enhance the story and the character's struggles tenfold. Even little details like how overly animated the jester is, bullets splitting into several pieces, or even repeating certain punches or slashes to give them greater impact. They're just so good that they've made me an honest-to-goodness fan of the series now. I'm definitely going to revisit 4 and actually try to beat it, and I can't wait to see how 5 turns out if I ever manage to get round to that one. Speed dating for ghosts for the Nintendo Switch. I must admit, I bought this one entirely because the name made me laugh, but thankfully the underlying game is very good. It's a simple visual novel by Copy Chaser Games where you play as a ghost, going to a speed dating group and talking to various ghosts who you can then date afterwards. There's no true ending as such, more just dating all the different ghosts and experiencing their stories. They all have a different tone and feel going on, which is executed very well in both the concise dialogue and the tricks the presentation uses to make each moment stronger, like changing fonts depending on who you're talking to, or slowing down the music when around a particular ghost. It even got me thinking on a few occasions, not to mention feeling for its cast plenty of times. This is one of my favorite story-focused games in recent memory, and one I'd happily recommend you check out if it interests you. Gunple Gunman's Proof for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Now that I've exhausted all the major level packs I can find for Sonic Roboblast 2, I decided to try and find some Super Nintendo games to play on the PC when I want to chill out. There's tons and tons and tons of games I could check out, to the point where it overwhelmed me, so I decided to narrow things down. I asked some friends what I should go for, and I inexplicably got a couple of suggestions for cowboy-themed games, like Wild Guns and The Great Battle 5. For fun, I grabbed as many Western-inspired games as I could find and see how it fared. Granted, that only amounted to about 5 games, but hey, I did it anyway, why not? Gunple Gunman's Proof is a Japan-only mix of an action RPG, it's got the overworld, the dungeons, upgrading gear and health, with mechanics of an arcade top-down shooter. You have a strafing button, you got projectile weapons, temporary pickups, and even a live system, all wrapped up into a charming, goofy adventure about a young boy fighting off weird aliens and monsters that have invaded his home island. People have compared this to Zelda, but I don't really see it beyond resembling most action RPGs that took their basic cue from Zelda in terms of perspective and structure. Puzzles are non-existent apart from navigating dungeon layouts, and while you learn some abilities in the overworld to get around, they don't have any use when you're inside dungeons. I don't really mind that though, since it means that Gunple has a pretty straightforward vibe that I quite enjoy. You head into a dungeon, shoot some guys, find treasure to give you more points, and have a generally good time. Dungeon layouts are at least varied, with the ghost town being a particular highlight in how you repeatedly head in and out of different houses in the overworld to find new parts of the dungeon below. This is aided by some very nice music to listen to, making for another Super Nintendo soundtrack that I don't think would work on other systems with its lovely strings and woodwinds, some earthbound as heck sound and trumpets, and pleasant guitar and bass plugs backing up some pretty great tunes. There are some things I'm not keen on. The game doesn't explain how you save, so you could go through an entire playthrough without doing so. Hint, go to the top right bed in your house at the top of the village, that's how you save. And fighting bosses gets a bit too button mashy as you're constantly shooting at them. But otherwise it's a brief but very solid game, only took me about 3.5 hours to beat, and I definitely recommend it if this sounds like it might be up your alley. There's an English fan translation courtesy of the old Aeon Genesis fan translation group, so just do that usual thing of patching it to a ROM. Or find a pre-patched version if you want to be super cheeky, wink wink. And with that, we wrapped up another episode of the series. I hope that you enjoyed watching and that you'll tune in for the next video. Thank you so much, and until we meet again, have a wonderful day.